Hey, I want to talk about the battle between sales and operations and how the good guys finally won. Keep listening.
Welcome to the Intentional Success Podcast, where we unpack the top strategies, explore business trends, and drill down into best practices to help your live events production business grow and scale on purpose. I'm your host, Tom Stimson.
All right, who are the good guys? Who are the good guys? I know you really want to know who the good guys are. Well, I'm an ops person. Of course, I think the ops people are the good guys, right? I'm also a salesperson, so I think salespeople are the good guys. And I'm management and admin. So here's the good guys are the people that want to do good work for the right customers and make money and have fun. Those are the good guys. And the fact of the matter is, as much as, we've watched the battle between sales and operations over the years, over the decades, everybody actually really wanted the right things to happen. The problem is that, our processes didn't work in a way. We didn't have a shared language. We didn't have a shared definition of success. And honestly, we had a really stupid view of math manifest in job costing, which pitted sales against operations. I mean, let's think about how crazy this is, right? Sales was getting compensated and getting bonuses for selling jobs that operations is going, we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do this. Of course, there's a battle between sales and operations when sales, working in their own best interest, sells jobs and gets discounts and, doesn't look at the calendar because, well, that's what they're compensated to do. They're incentivized to do that. And operations is incentivized to make it all work and figure out the most profitable way to pull this off. Control the resources, get the maximum utilization of gear, and don't hire any more people unless we need them. And this is the world I grew up in, in this industry. This nonstop battle between the people who sold things and the people who had to deliver those things, and that lack of a shared language and understanding and a common goal. Well, guess what? When I did finally, take a full-time job as further working in a company, my original title, ironic as it may seem now, was I was rental manager. And as rental manager, well, I took small orders. I also took big orders, and I made sure that the equipment left the warehouse, that was supposed to go. Manage the inventory for whatever that meant. So, yeah, we were thinking like a rental company because we bought equipment and we rented it to people, and rental was the transaction. But our goal was actually to do shows where rental was just how we kept score. But I overcame or avoided that sales versus operations battle by basically managing sales and operations. And as we added salespeople, they came to work under me. And as we expanded, the warehouse and the team and added technicians, they worked under me. And my job was to keep those two groups working together. My saying, and all my former teammates remember this, is that, operations' job is to do whatever sales sold, and sales' job is to sell what operations can support. And in the ideal world, there's a nod between each other saying, hey, man, you were obviously between a rock and a hard spot to have to sell it that way, but I got your back. We'll make this work. And vice versa, saying, hey, the client wants to do this. Can you tell me what would be the best way for us to pull that off during that busy month that's coming up? And creating that conversation between, sales and operations so that we can get the best outcome possible and not be enemies, right? Be collaborators. And that worked really well. And it changed, having that collaboration did affect how processes were developed, how we developed systems, how we put put tools into the product codes. Yes, we did have, and everybody should, but sometimes it's difficult to do, have systems that are built into your inventory system. In other words, here's a package of products that all always live together. They get cased up together, and there's labels that says, here's everything that comes with this. Or it may be a system with racks and drawers and components and accessories that always goes out together from an operational standpoint. But we also had a system from a sales standpoint. And as we got better at understanding how this worked, the sales systems and the operational systems soon became more and more aligned, and they actually ended up being the same thing, even though in a customer-facing document, we may have called it one thing. In a warehouse or show crew-facing document, we called it something else. And it got to the point where we're saying, hey, here's what we promised the client, and here's the stuff you're going to get to do it with. And those systems were always complete. In other words, you're not getting part of this system. You always got the whole system. And in our methodology, we overcame this battle between interpretation between the sales order and the operational order by common sizing everything. We had one camera package. It didn't matter if you just needed to stick a camera on a stick and lock it down, or you needed to put a full studio kit on it. You got the same thing. All the parts and pieces were there. We sent out front and rear fabrics with our screens because best laid plans, sometimes you get into that ballroom and there's not space for rear projection. So we solved a lot of these problems by working through the collaboration. Now, I'm bringing this up because I still run into a lot of companies out there where the operations people feel that their job is they have to police sales, right? They need to protect capacity. They're the ones that say, no, we're too busy. You need to charge, or you didn't charge the client enough. Don't you know what these things cost? Oh, we're out of that. You should charge more. And that's kind of an us versus them mentality, because how is sales supposed to keep up with all the nuances of what's going on in operations in terms of how they're choosing to allocate equipment, what we're going to be short of and everything? Because honestly, operations won't really know until it has to know. But because our operations are generally reactive instead of proactive, we do find ourselves in those situations where the ops team is taking a look at the available resources and the jobs that are coming up ahead, and they've assigned things to it, and they've put it in the schedule, and changing it's going to be problematic. It's going to be very difficult to do. And if we sell one more job, it's going to wreck all of our plans. And we're out of people, and we're going to have to get more equipment, and the costs are going to go through the roof. And we get back to that us and them scenario. And the reason that still happens is that most people still look at profitability in terms of job cost. So that job cost, which is protected by operations, and sales really has no control over job cost. They can only control how profitable it was when they sold it. They don't have any control over how profitable it will be when delivered. Operations does that. Well, now that we've settled that model that it's operations that makes money and sales just generates revenue and operations generates gross profit, well, why shouldn't operations be in charge? But if operations were in charge, we would only sell jobs that exactly fit our inventory, perfectly fit into our schedule. We didn't have to hire anybody, so that our job cost is always zero, and it can all be done with in-house resources, which would not make a very interesting or profitable business. So the big picture of all of this comes back to the idea, the concept of scalability and balance, and what does that organization look like? And we are getting ready for Jumpstart Planning and Execution in August in Denver, 14th and 15th of August, where we are going to take that team of people who used to be called ops and help them understand what the planning group looks like. So planning is the proactive approach to operations. Planning takes different people. It starts earlier in the process. It has a different challenge to meet. It has a different goal than operations. Operations is to utilize the resources, fill in the gaps where necessary, and document it. Planning's job is to do all of that, but also optimize it, but treat every job the same. Every job needs the same resources. Every job needs to be profitable, and we need to do it without adding permanent overhead. So planning teams are proactive and much less likely, typical ops manager, right? They're the ops manager. They're figuring all this stuff out, and then we're really busy. We sit out on a show site, or they have to jump in the truck, or those sorts of things. And those are a result of inadequate planning and preparation. Well, we didn't want to hire another truck driver in case we didn't need to. So I'm saving the company money by driving the truck myself. And if I didn't need to drive the truck, then we wouldn't have had to hire a driver. And we get this whole this Ouroboros of thinking where we tried to save the company money and ended up in a situation where I had to take a key resource for planning out of the equation and stick them in the truck or send them to show site. So in our scalability model, we take the selling sphere and the planning sphere and the admin sphere, and everybody in those groups are what I've traditionally called anchor positions. These are people who are locked into that role because there's something that needs to be done all the time. Planning is always busy because planning is always proactive. Sometimes they have the luxury of planning farther out. Sometimes they have the luxury of building a bigger resource pool or refining processes, but planning is never not busy. Therefore, the people who are planning, who are part of that team, have to always be available to do that work. So the big picture is that we are creating these anchor positions and we are changing roles. And for companies that are still have one foot stuck in the operations world, Jumpstart Workshop is how we're going to pull you forward to see how it should work. Start to see where you fit in to your new role as part of a planning team. How you can give you the information so you can go back to your organization and say, hey, here's a better model that we could follow that's going to get us the results that we actually want, rather than these rules that we created 5, 10, or 20 years ago that actually punish us for having capacity. So the roles of the planning group are different, but similar to the operations group. A couple of the things that are very different in anchor positions, and in that right now in your organization, you have somebody who's an absolute genius on how to pull off a big show. And you know what? You probably have them out there doing a big show right now. And the big show that sales is trying to quote, they're kind of waiting till that person is available to say, hey, will this work? How do we do this? Ask those questions that I think are totally unimportant at this stage. Like, how many rigging points do I need to put in the order? None of that stuff should matter. But the fact is, because of the models that we've built over the years, these questions become very important when trying to price things, because we don't know how much gear we're going to need to send. And it also means that we may not know how many people we need to send, and we need that expert. But one of the first things I would ask you to do is that have somebody on your planning team who is that expert, because we have that need every day. And if they're busy out there doing shows, well, maybe that's their highest and best use, and that should be their full-time job if you have enough work. But I need somebody whose highest and best use is making sure that every show gets the attention to detail that a senior production manager would give. And that same person in a smaller company can also be a resource to the selling team to make sure they build their orders correctly. Now, in a larger company, I might have another person who's a senior production manager who lives on the selling team and helps them all the time. There is a direct resource within selling that can go to meetings, do site surveys, help with the project design, talk to the customer, do all the discovery work to support sales in the process of developing the right order for the customer. and there's enough work going on that that person is busy helping develop future proposals and future jobs, which will eventually fall into the hands of planning, who have someone on that team who's their equal. But in a smaller company, that senior production manager should probably just live in the planning group and has time to support both areas. There's an overlap in that Venn diagram of selling, planning, and administration where shared resources can exist. And changing that role is very difficult because, oh my goodness, this person should be billable. They need to be out in the field. Well, not everybody needs to be billable. Some of us are overhead. So making talent like that part of your overhead does really make you want to sell more because you've got to cover that and you've got this great resource. The wonderful thing about scalability is that once you start committing the higher level talent to these anchor roles, you need smaller anchor teams because you have so much knowledge and experience there that they can build the systems and processes and utilize a smaller team to get a lot of work done. The definition of a planning group, the old ops group, is about centralizing services. Many operations teams have been supported before scalability through project managers. And project managers have been the heroes of the story because project managers have filled the gap between where sales has fallen short by not clearly defining the scope of work, creating opportunities for scope creep, not being in sync with the rest of the organization. And project managers come in and bridge that gap and manage the client relationship so that the salesperson can go sell another job. Sounds great in theory, but the project manager is now also managing the operations process and they're walking an order through the system, which means operations doesn't have to provide for all those things. They don't have to provide central services like now I have a project manager ordering a scissors lift or arranging for a sub-rental delivery or booking their own labor or, God help us, booking travel. And these are all things that a project manager could do. But if I have two project managers, they're now doing redundant work. And the fact is, the right time to be managing things and booking things and ordering sub-rentals and booking labor might be while that project manager is on a different show. So project managers have limited capacity. They can only be in 3 places in one time, as miraculous as that is. But a lot of this work can be done in the background by a central service. And they don't have to be an expert in everything, right? The person who books travel doesn't have to know everything about rigging a show. You don't have to know how to rig a show in order to book a rigger, right? You don't know how to load in a show to book a stagehand. You don't have to be a video engineer book a video crew. So we can have people who do those things for us and centralize that resource within our planning group, which, by the way, is run by this very knowledgeable production manager who can help train and elevate the skills and talents of the people that fill into those roles. Another thing that planning does differently from operations is how they manage a workforce. Operations typically has a bench of workforce. They have a go-to list of employees that they can schedule on shows, and when the employees are scheduled out, they have some freelancers, some go-to freelancers that they schedule out. They may have a labor company or two that they use to fill in, the stagehand roles, or maybe the light tech roles and those things. And when that capacity runs out, well, hopefully we're out of gear and we haven't sold any more shows because we've done everything we have. We've used it all up. Planning, however, rather than working from a bench of people who are waiting to be scheduled, remember, planning is proactive. We don't wait to the last minute and go, oh, don't worry, we can do another show. I've got people sitting over here. Well, we've got more gear. I'll just use that. No, planning is looking ahead. And they end up working with what we call on-demand workforces. Because we're planning farther ahead, we want to put the right talent where we need them. We don't need as deep a bench of staff workers. We don't work from a small pool of freelancers. We want to work from a large pool of resources, a very deep bench instead of a finite bench. And we want to get off that bench as quickly as possible. So even if you have a few people who sit on the bench, I may not want to use them first. I may want to hold them back for last minute jobs and fill-in jobs. Planning is looking ahead, saying, hey, I got to hold back a little bit because busiest week of the year, best customer is going to come and want us to do something. I've got some team available for doing that. I have vendors. Now, your vendors don't want to hold out resources for you, but you can hold out your own. Your planning team is utilizing your resources of freelancers, vendors, suppliers, part-time employees to their fullest utilization, their best capacity, their highest and best use through an on-demand workforce. And you need a much bigger workforce to have an effective on-demand workforce. In fact, if you're used to just scheduling from your internal resources and a small pool of freelancers, you might need 4 times as many people on your on-demand workforce. And planning will know how to spread that work around to keep them all engaged and make them all available for you. So it's a different world that we're living in compared to operations. It's less reactive, it's more proactive. But the output, the intention of the output is actually the same. The intentional output of operations combined with project management is that the show crew gets all the equipment, all the people, all the resources they need to deliver to show site at the right time with a comprehensive plan about how to execute the show. All the big questions have been answered. All the variables have been addressed. The solution is written. Of course, there's going to be improvisation on a show site because that's the way shows go. Something is going to change. We want the right people there. But operations and project manager did that together, which means each job, the weakest link in each job is actually going to be its project manager. And jobs with better project managers are going to get planned better. But we want all of our jobs to be planned better. So this is not to say get rid, when we get together at Jumpstart and talk about what the planning version of your operations organization needs to be, I'm not going to tell you to fire all your project managers or dump them or figure out how to work without them. I want you to figure out how to make your project managers more productive by doing things for them that other people can easily do. I want to reduce the demand on administrative tasks that we're asking project managers to do and increase their utilization for their highest and best use, which is managing the show itself. Okay, preparing the team for the plan, getting there on show site, managing the changes, providing the leadership through that process, making sure the client sees everything being properly executed, and then moving quickly on to the next job when that show is over, rather than moving back into an operations role and being operations for a week or two to get their job ready so they can go back out and be the on-site project manager. Operations and project management built a show book. It was the project manager's show book. And planning can also build the show book. Planning can provide all the information that project managers are used to getting for themselves. There's still some things project managers will contribute to the show book, but your planning team can complete the show book. And going back to my original story about how I manage that sales and operations relationship, one of the things that we did was made sure that every job got the same level of attention to detail. Every job was treated equally. Every job was finished to the same expectations level so that there were no orphan jobs. We used to say there's no small jobs, just small budgets. A small budget job was done as correctly as a high budget job could be. So planning teams make sure that all jobs get treated equally so that we're not applying a less experienced project manager or a less detail-oriented project manager to jobs, particularly last-minute jobs, which might need more attention. All the jobs get attention, and all jobs get that show book. So the team on site knows how to execute, even if it's one person, right? I need to know what's coming. I need to know what was promised. I need to know what success looks like so that on show site that I can engineer that result, whether there's a project manager there to supervise me or give me step by step what to do, or I become the project manager on site for that show as the technician. So the success of the show is paramount. Planning is key to all of that. There's one more element of planning that's very important for us to talk about and dive deeper into when we get to Jumpstart, and that's the feedback loop. Procurement lives within planning. We are buying, right? We are booking labor, we're booking travel, we're renting trucks, we're hiring trucking companies, we're managing logistics. We have our finger on the pulse of costs every single day, and we will be the first to know when costs are changing. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, but we certainly need to know about that because that affects what selling happens. Planning will always know how well our inventory is being utilized and whether we have the right inventory. We'll get the feedback. Maybe we don't need to go out and buy a 300-foot LED wall or 40,000 lumen projectors when we would get better utilization on the same money spent on buying the glue items that make our inventory work better, more efficiently, make it easier to bring sub-rentals and sell. Again, this is what planning is going to be concerned about, is how can I get more jobs done at the same level of fit and finish? What are the tools that I need to do that? That's where I would spend my money. So planning is a much more robust organization than operations. And I want to help you understand how to convert your operational mindset into a planning mindset and get the right people in the right roles. This is going to open up your capacity. It's going to make it easier for you to sell more jobs. It's going to make all the jobs easier to push through your system and do consistent work. And it's going to allow sales to go out there and confidently win more business for you because they can count on the planning team to do the right thing for every job rather than just focus on the job cost of one individual job at a time, which, face it, is mostly operations going, no, we can't do that. No, that costs too much. No, we're out of that. Who wants that job? I want a planning job where I get to say, yes, here's what it's going to cost you. Yes, and here's what it's going to cost you. Of course we can do that. Here's what it's going to cost you. Much more useful too. So I hope you'll take a look at Jumpstart. Visit my website, drstimpson.com/events. Learn more about Jumpstart and get your operations team out to Denver in August so that we could turn them into a planning organization. Thanks for listening.
If you want to find out more about today's episode, go to trstimpson.com/podcast, where you'll find the show notes, related links, and tons of other valuable resources. If you haven't already subscribed to the Intentional Success Podcast, please do so, and I'd greatly appreciate if you would rate and review the show. Also, if you think you might be a good fit to work together or want more information about the Stimson Group, I'd love to hear from you. Visit trstimpson.com for more information.